As you know, I'm Dr. Ross, clinic director here. We're going to talk about, a lot of big issue here and health-wise here in Central Texas in Austin is all about allergies. And you understand that allergies is a common thing here, and most of them are environmental for most people, but it all goes back down to, how strong of an immune system you have to adapt to the environment that your body is exposed to. So we'll go through that whole physiology of the body, but I always like to start with the why before the how. Why does your body respond the way it does? Because if you better understand the why, then when I tell you the hows, it'll make a lot more sense. All right, you with me? I talk fast, so if you listen fast, I always say we will get through this quickly. Take notes, ask questions at the end. I'll stay once I'm done for any specific questions you guys might have. Make sense? All right. So a lot of people, base their health on their calendar of when allergies are hitting, right? So when people, wake up, oh my goodness, the allergy count is so many, particles per cubic, centimeters, and I'm going to have a horrible day, and, February's coming or December's coming, and I got to decide, if I should start taking my Flonase or my Claritin, because we're expecting that our bodies are not going to work properly during these periods, right? So, the common questions I always hear from patients, doc, how do I figure out what I'm allergic to so I can avoid it or prevent it from bothering me? Foods, airborne allergen, grasses, molds, animals, pet dander, you name it. The mattress that I sleep on, does it, influence how I respond to allergens? What's the pollen count today, like we discussed? Air quality, what filter should I use? We have all these strategies, what drug should I take? And how can I survive another day, right? Common questions, yes? Well, I say let's ask some better questions. How does the immune system actually work, and why do I respond the way that it does? What is a healthy immune response? When we are exposed to allergens, what should that look like? What is a healthy response to what we call non-self particles or non-self proteins that our body doesn't like? Should our body be producing all this histamine, and is it normal? And how should our bodies, how can we overcome it? You notice that allergies are going up, right? You notice more and more people are becoming more allergic to more things, right? How many of you here remember when you were in grade school hearing about peanut allergies? Right. Most people don't even say that. Nowadays, you can't even come within a 50-yard radius of a school with a peanut-contained food because, they'll throw you off campus because, they're peanut-free zones, right? Just as an example, right? Yeah, these are just examples of, how crazy it's become when we talk about, health, especially with kids. Autoimmune diseases, we'll talk about a little bit tonight. We'll bring up vaccines a little bit. I know it's a debatable topic and it's a very hot topic for a lot of people, but we'll bring that up a little bit. And a lot of people blame it's in their genes. Our human genome has not changed for over 40,000 years. So if we blame it on genes, obviously we must have evolved very quickly in a short period of time. So we'll talk about that tonight, and obviously YU. And I put YU up there because do you notice that not everybody is, quote, allergic to the same thing or different things or different, levels? Why is that? Why would one person be allergic to cedar pollen and possibly another person has no effect? You ever wonder why that is? Why is that? Why is one person allergic to peanuts and one person isn't? Why is that? Right? So we'll talk about that.
Exposure. Right. You might not have it, but after 5 years of being here, you might get it.
Maybe. We'll talk about that. Why? Why? Which is the biggest question when it comes to your health. You always want to understand the why before the hows, right? So if we can break down the whys, like I said, the hows make so much more sense. So where am I going to, the path I'm taking you down. And if you guys are looking at the handout that you have, all the slides are not on there. The pertinent slides are on there, but not all of them. So don't be alarmed if you say, I don't have that slide, because I left some out on purpose. So if you understand that you have a certain constituents, right? Your makeup. Were you able to choose who your mother and father were? You were not, right? So Your mother and father, you know, obviously came together and you were born, all right? And your mother and father made up your constituents. Easy way to look at this is your phenotypes, right? Some of you have brown eyes, some of you have, you know, green eyes and blue eyes, right? Those constituents you cannot change. You understand that? Mm-hmm. Those, what we call phenotypes, or just your genetic makeup, you cannot change those things. Make sense? What you have 100% control of, though, is the lifestyle that you put your body in, the environment, the food that you put in your body, you know, the exercise, the mental health that you have, all that you have control over, do you not? So you have to understand that your lifestyle will have an influence on how your constituents is expressed. All right? The best way I have an analogy for this is think of, you know, everyone remember the game Russian roulette? All right. So Russian roulette, you know, you put the bullet in the chamber, and how many times you click the revolver increases your chance of that bullet being shot, right? So think about that bullet is a part of your constituents, a gene, and your lifestyle determines how much it gets expressed by how many clicks of the revolver. So if you have a constituents where, you know, your genetic makeup, and you are vulnerable to certain things. I use a simple thing like if you have a past history of heart disease in your family, very easy for us to compare to, and you know that, hey, you know hypertension and cardiovascular issues in your family is just part of your family history, right? Do you think it's wise for you to eat foods that are high in fat and don't exercise and drink alcohol, right? That's what I'm talking about. Your lifestyle is also going to make that part of your constituents be amplified in expression. Does that make sense? But that goes for everything, right? When it comes to your immune system, your cardiovascular health, your digestive, your constituents is your constituents, right? This is why some people have higher sensitivities and lower sensitivities to different pollens and allergens, right? It has something to do with exposure as well, the amount of exposure, right? The people that are less sensitive, all right, so they can have more exposure and they won't affect them. But people that are highly sensitive, all right, obviously going to be, with less exposure, will have more of an expression in terms of how their immune system responds. Does that make sense? Because that's really a good foundation where we're going to go. Because everything we're going to talk about is here. If you're the type of person that believes, you know, my mother has sinus issues and my grandmother and grandfather has sinus issues, I'm going to have sinus issues, this workshop is not for you, because your mindset on how you think your body works is not right. Right? You're just thinking, hey, that's the way I was. That's the same belief system. My dad had a heart attack in his 30s, I'm going to have a heart attack in my 30s. Right? My mother had cancer, I'm going to have cancer. That type of, when I hear people talk about their health that way, I say you have 100% control of how that constituents gets expressed in your life through habits day to day. All right? So let's start. Your immune system is broken down into many glands and tissues in your body. All right, we're not going to go over all of them: spleen, bone marrow, thyroid. I mean, there is so many different things that we can talk about that contributes to how strong your immune system is. You know, we don't have the time, nor do you guys probably have the patience to go through what each one does for you, right? But they all produce some sort of contribution to your immune system in terms of antibodies, mast cells, which we'll talk about. They all have a different role. And the way to think about how all these different organ systems and glands work is to compare it to our national defense system, right? We have specialized departments of security when it comes to our national security. We have the Marines, the Air Force, right? All those different specialized forces have a specific role, right? You know, defense by water, defense by air, defense by land, correct? That's how our immune system works. There's specialized cells for different type of intolerance that our body is exposed to. So that's a good way, just in general, how to look at how your immune system works. Now, when your body is exposed to a non-self particle, meaning something that doesn't belong in your body, and it's also referenced as a non-self protein, your body sees it as a threat. All right? This goes the same thing when it talks about a bacteria, a virus, a pollen, or a food that enters into the environment. Your body says, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not supposed to be here. All right? How do we get rid of it? All right? how does our national defense usually go about getting rid of a intruder, invader, if our country was obviously threatened by that? What do? Do we try to contain it, right? The first thing is we try to contain the threat, all right, and then eliminate the threat, right? Your body does the same thing. And how does it do this? Once your body recognizes what that non-self and non-self protein or the non-self particle in your body is, what it does, it releases, i.e. deploys, an immune response. It goes and seeks and attacks, all right? And this is why what a lot of people have an issue with is that it's actually an over-response to the non-self protein, where antibodies will see the non-self protein or particle, all right, and go and attack it. It'll attach to it, and once that antibody attaches to it, it kind of reads what it's trying to do, right? Is it environmental? Is it, digestive? Is it viral? Is it bacterial? And it'll call in whatever it needs to help to destroy it. This contains it, the antibody contains it, and then the specialized cells, for most people when it comes to allergies, it's a mast cell. All right, there's different ones. There's eosinophils, there's white blood cells, right? There's all different ones. But the mast cell, for most part, is what is called on for allergies. And that mast cell attaches to the antibodies. What do you think the mast cell has inside of it? What do we take as a medication to reduce this response? Antihistamine. So what do you think the mast cell releases?
Antihistamine?
Histamine.
Histamine.
It releases histamine because now it's going to try and contain that non-self protein so it does not go to the rest of your body, right? And a lot of people call that mucus. The mucus, the viscosity of the mucus gets thickened because it does not want that non-self protein to travel, right? So most of the pollens, where they enter in our bodies, how do they enter? Through our
nose.
Right, or through mouth, right? So that's why people say, Doc, my sinuses are just going to explode. I got all this pressure in my head. Your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's just an over-response to it. That histamine is produced because it thickens. It does not want that non-self protein or the non-self particle to go to the rest of your body. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to. We're on track? All right. So what we take is an antihistamine, so this process gets reduced, right? So for some people, eliminate it completely. How vulnerable are you for more of these non-self proteins to accumulate in your body? More and more. And that's why most people, when it comes to allergens, do their allergies get better or worse as they take Claritin and Flonase? Because you hear that, hey, I used to take 1 Claritin a day. That just doesn't cut anymore. Now I need to take 2, right? Claritin doesn't work anymore, so now I got to take Flonase and Claritin, right? Because what we're doing is we're suppressing. The body's trying to push to say, hey, this process is what's kind of keep it, from spreading, and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And this is why things get amplified as years and years go by. Are you with me? So the cool thing about the body, though, is these antibodies remember the non-self protein, right? It creates memory. So when it recognizes the same non-self protein again, or the non-self particle again, it does not have to go through the recognition phase anymore, right? The antibodies can attack it right away because it recognizes it and says, we're going to attack it right away. And that's why a lot of people see that their immune response goes even quicker and quicker as years go by, all right? So we have to learn on how to regulate this system naturally so it does what it's supposed to be, and we don't consistently suppress it, and gets amplified as years go on. So, like I said, before we move on, we always try the defensive, right? Like, hey, let's just avoid it all, right? Let's not go outside, let's wear masks, let's do all these things to avoid all these pollens and allergens, so our body is not exposed to it. Some people just take the drugs, right? We talked about that. The shots, which is just like taking drugs, but in a different manner. The shots, what does the shots do, an allergy shot? What do you think the purpose of the allergy shot is?
Was it the same thing as pills?
It is, but what the shots do is it is a version of the allergen injected into your body, so your body can go through the same exercise of recognizing the non-self protein and the non-self particle. So then when it's exposed to the real thing, it can attack it easier and better. All right? Exactly. Kind of like a vaccine, right? But what have we found out with the shots over time? Does it last, or does you have to go back and keep getting shots usually? You just have to go back, right? Because it's not natural immunity, right? You're not building it in a natural way. But if you look at, the drugs specifically, there is a place for the drugs. For an acute crisis, it's absolutely necessary. Can everyone give me a example when a drug, for an allergen, is absolutely necessary?
An asthma attack.
That's right. Right? When it's that acute that, hey, okay, now we're talking about life and death, right? How about someone who, like an EpiPen, right? When you get stung by a bee or something, again, non-self protein, non-self particle into your body, an EpiPen can be very, life-saving, which is absolutely critical, and it's great that we have these things. But it should not be used as a lifestyle, right? Now we're going to the idea that, hey, if you have an allergen, as a lifestyle, we take drugs to suppress it or to help manage it, which is not really a good way to build your immune system. So we're going to go through a process, a grading system, to see how strong your immune system is. Because the stronger the immune system, the better that regulation of that histamine and the mast cell and the antibodies attacking a non-self protein works, and it can be balanced and regulated. That's your body's job and definition of health, is how readily it could respond and adapt to a threat. That's a good definition of health, right? So we're going to start all the way from when you were born, even before you were born, in utero, right? How your immune system gets affected. Do you think that the health of mom directly reflects how good your immune system is?
Yeah.
Of course. How well mom ate, exercise, mental health, all in that, gets passed on to the fetus, right? So the immune system starts developing in utero. But the biggest part when the immune system is developed is between months 0 from birth to 6 months. A very big portion of your immune system is determined in those 6 months. So we got to make sure we do things right in those 6 months. And unfortunately, there's been a generation where where mothers were told to drink what? Or give babies what versus breastfeeding? Formula, right? And we all know that breast milk has tons and tons of immunoproperties and memorized antibodies that the mother already went through her whole life, and that programmed antibodies just gets transferred. It's like taking a hard drive out of one computer and putting it in another computer. And you don't even have to go through the process of developing all that programming. It's already done through breast milk. They say that a teaspoon of breast milk contains up to 10,000 antibodies.
Wow.
All right? But there was a generation of moms that said, hey, giving your baby formula is better than breastfeeding. And there was a generation that did that, And we see now the ramifications of those people that, yes, their immune systems are compromised. Another thing that we did, that we don't do anymore, is what did we do to kids when their tonsils were enlarged?
Oh, we took them out.
We took them out, right? Because we said, well, they're inflamed, they're engorged, and that we need to take them out because they look infected, right? Well, we now understand through immunology that those tonsils played a very big role in immune development in children. All right? Do we take tonsils out anymore?
No.
You don't hear that, right? The only way that they take out tonsils if it obstructs, breathing with sleep deprivation with kids, right? But now you very rarely hear that we're going to take out tonsils. So we take care of an ENT, and he was at this workshop a few years ago, and he brought up a very good statement on why, how do people understand this. And he says, Doc, think about this. The tonsils are a gland that helps produce antibodies up to the age of 12. We knew through research and understood that what we were doing before did not serve the patient well in removing tonsils just because they're engorged, and we were thinking that they were infected, and that's why we removed them. So he said, compare this to another gland in your body, the gland that we highly respect with value. And he goes, how about a little boy? If that little boy's testicles were engorged and inflamed, would we just go remove them? No, right? We'd figure out a way, to make sure that we keep those glands working, right? He goes, no different with any other gland in your body. He goes, and that's where we understood through history that we didn't make the same mistake again, that they're very resistant to remove adenoids and tonsils with kids now because they know they contribute to immune response and immune development. All right? That's why you don't see that anymore. So let's start from in utero to delivery. If you're delivered naturally, you picked up mucus from mom's anus. This is how it works, that it gets ingested by baby's mouth through the birth process. And that triggers the immune response to start, because now it's telling the baby, the fetus, that you're going from an internal environment to an external environment, and that bacteria starts to get the immune system working. All right, that is as disgusting as I'm going to get. All right, but that does happen. All right. Now, if you're born C-section, does that process happen? It's missed. All right. So you lose points already right there. If you're born C-section, your immune system already has a hard time getting started. All right. And then we went to, obviously we're in a chiropractic office, right? So for me, making sure brain to body connection is working the way it should be, making sure that nervous system is running that body, that immune system, getting that baby checked after delivery. We talked about breastfeeding. This is a huge one, infection and fever, right? To build an immune system, it just like training when you're in the Army, what do they do to you? Do they give you, heavy artillery as soon as you join? No, right? It's a progression, right? You go through physical training, and then you start, they might give you weaponry where you might be using a knife or a gun or just combat. Then you move up into more heavy artillery, and then you move up into, the progression, right? That's how it works, right? No different for your body. When your body's tested, all right, especially the immune system, and the biggest test for a child is when its initial infection, like a non-indigenous bacteria gets into the body sees it, recognizes it, it produces a fever to incubate it and kill it, right? What's the first thing that we do in the Western world when a child has a fever?
Aspirin or something.
Right, we Tylenol, Motrin, we suppress it, right? And as soon as we suppress it, we kill that immune response. Right? We're telling the body, hey, we're programming it to say, hey, this is not normal, we're shutting it down, right? And then the baby gets infected again, or later on, raises a fever, we say another Motrin, right? We don't let the maturation of the immune system progress as it should. Now, immunology has come a long way. This is probably the most least understood area of the body when it comes to systems. When we talk about digestive, cardio, immune system is probably the least understood, and there's so much more education that needs to be done and research. But we do understand one thing now, that a lot of immunologists support the idea that to test a child's immune system to develop properly is to follow the rule of threes, right? A child by the age of 3 should have 3 fevers that match or exceed 103 degrees. All right? And that, they know that you're letting the child obviously mature its immune system, fight the indigenous bacteria, and develop a strong immune system, right? For some people, that freaks them out. 103 fever, oh my goodness. But if it's carefully monitored, it actually is a good thing. Now, if the fever gets into higher amounts, yes, we went into the other risk factors, febrile seizures and whatnot. But 103, children can handle much more higher fever than adults, right? My kid, my little boy Gavin, who's 5 years old now, when he was 2.5, his highest fever, and he did have multiple fevers that ran that high, but his highest fever that he reached was 104.6. All right. Now, did we just let him, lie there and let him sit with 104.6 degree fever? No. We took, the proper steps. We gave him a tempered bath. We tried to reduce his fever by cold compresses. All those things help reduce the fever naturally while the body's working. Just monitoring that process and let that baby do what it needs to do. Now, nowadays, a mom or a parent can sit at home while monitoring this process, right? It's a very important process because what gets in the way? Parents have to work, my kid can't go to daycare because, you have to be fever-free for 24 hours, he can't go to school, it's going to ruin my schedule. So what do we do in terms of our decision-making is based more on cultural trends versus what naturally should happen. Make sense? Expanding environment. This is another thing where our immune system gets compromised. If you really think about how quickly kids their environments get expands, is too fast actually. So when a child goes from in utero, born, right? That environment should be very close to mom, right? Maybe from in utero to bedroom. From bedroom, that child gets exposed to the house. From the house, that child gets exposed to the backyard. Right? And then from the backyard, slowly concentric circles of exposure so it can adapt, right? And if that adaptation allows the body to catch up to all this indigenous things that the baby is exposed to, all right? How early do some daycares accept children? What age?
6 weeks.
6 weeks, right? Imagine that, in utero, 6 weeks ago. Now you're in an environment where there's all these other babies, right? Imagine how much indigenous bacteria are brought in from all these other environments, right? And you expect that child to survive when it comes to their immune system. It's not going to happen. It just can't happen, right? And that's just one example. Bring a baby out in public too early. Like the biggest thing is what they say is, that the baby should never leave the home after 2 weeks of birth. Like you shouldn't even consider bringing the baby outside of the home environment after 2 weeks of birth. Right? To let it catch up again.
You mean until after 2 weeks?
After 2 weeks, just outside the house, right? And we're bringing, you'll see newborn.
They have to go to the doctor's appointments during that
right?
time.
Cultural trends does not allow us to do what naturally should happen, right? So expanding environment. So if you were, again, if a child was exposed to too big of an too quickly of an expanding environment, their immune system can't catch up, and it's just gonna play that catch up game their whole life. We'll talk about some things when it comes to the wellness lifestyle. We talk about that a lot here. All of it comes down to nutrition, exercise, and mental well-being. And we'll talk about sufficiency and purity when it comes to supplements as well. Okay? So how do you think you did on a scorecard, all those things for yourself? As much as you know, how did you do building that immune system? Because that number, in terms of how well you did, whenever it talks to you about lifestyle and how it expresses constituents, the better you did at that, the less sensitive you're going to be to all these things that you get exposed to. Just know your immune system now today was dictated a long time ago by how this process happened naturally. All right, if this process did not happen the way it should, you're going to be one of those people that's highly sensitive, right? Because if you get exposed to non-self protein or non-self particle, your body is so sensitive, and you're going to see those rash reactions of histamine response and things like that because your immune system didn't develop naturally the way it should. So let's do the exact opposite, right? So like if you were induced versus natural birth, right? C-section versus vaginal birth. Subluxation, meaning didn't take care of physically your body, the spine. Inoculation, meaning that we talked about vaccines. Does anyone know what the current vaccine schedule calls for? How many inoculations by the age of 4 for a child here in the U.S.? If you followed the CDC recommendations, how many inoculations? Does anyone throw out a number? I just know this because we go through this with our kids.
8?
No.
20?
Nope. Higher.
I'm thinking 34.
38.
38.
If you follow the inoculation schedule, or this vaccine schedule right now that's put out by the CDC, and some of them are paired, right? Sometimes you get 3 at a time, but there are 38 different inoculations given to a child by the age of 4. I'm not here to say vaccines are bad, good, or ugly, but I am here to say, do you think to survive in our culture that a child needs 38 inoculations to be healthy? Like, do you think there's something wrong with that? And has the numbers gone up as the decades go by? All right. I'm just going to give you a comparison. Again, I'm not saying it's right, bad, good, or ugly, but our neighbors to the north, right? Just because I have attachments to Canada, right? But how many, by the age of 4, if you follow their vaccine schedule, how many inoculations each child gets by the age of 4? You want to take a guess?
8.
11. Do you think that there are different reasons why there's 11 there, right? Because industrialized culture, right? There's really, resources are almost the same, but 11 inoculations at the age of 4, 38 here in America, right? You think there's different reasoning why these things happen, right? Is it because the U.S. is more advanced and we just got vaccines out quicker? It's not the reason, right? The reasons why we have vaccines in the U.S. is totally different why the Canadian system uses vaccines, right? The biggest example I can give you is the chickenpox vaccine. Who here had chickenpox when they were young? Herd immunity, right? Natural immunity. When someone had chickenpox, your mom said, go to their house and get chickenpox, right? Because once you get it once, you're immune for life, right? So, what happened with chickenpox vaccine? If you really read, how the vaccine was developed, was not because of it was threatening to the person. It was because of how many dollars were lost in big corporate America from parents staying home sick with their child while the virus did its course. The chickenpox vaccine is probably one of the longest viruses that lasts anywhere between 7 to 14 or 15 days. So some people are taking a week to 2 weeks off. And they're losing all this benefit money paid out to people for sick days. So what they did, the biggest sponsorship for developing the vaccine came from Fortune 500 companies to develop the vaccine. Because they said, well, if I give the child the vaccine, do you have to go through the process of natural immunity? Kind of like an allergy shot? No, right? So what they saw over the years is that those numbers due to sick days, due to kids, parents calling in due to kids having chickenpox has gone down dramatically. Do you hear kids having chickenpox anymore? Right?
It's hard to get your kids exposed to other
Right,
kids.
right. But it's actually backfired now, right? Because now they're saying, well, if you had chickenpox, now you're susceptible to
Shingles.
shingles. So you better get the shingles vaccine, right? But if you had the chickenpox vaccine, after how many years do you have to get another vaccine?
7 years.
Every 7 to 10 years, you got to get it again and again and again, right?
So if you had chickenpox naturally, do you still have the? I've heard that means you might get shingles.
You're more susceptible to shingles, right?
If you
But
had chickenpox.
if you've had chickenpox. Now, they don't have, the thing is when you hear that, there's no cohort studies that can link the two,
Really?
There's nothing that proves that if you had, you're more susceptible to having shingles if you had the chickenpox or you didn't have the chickenpox. They're saying, yes, if you had chickenpox, you're more susceptible to shingles, but are you more susceptible to shingles if you didn't have the vaccine? They don't, there's no delineating evidence or research that shows, So, and what they're linking a lot of, where a lot of the research is going to now is all the preservatives we're putting in vaccines, if it has a correlation to the rise in Alzheimer's and dementia that we're seeing later on in life. Right? We don't have those cohort studies, unfortunately. We don't see that. These are all, we will probably find this out in the next decade or so. But, I still, again, the 38 inoculations just does not sit right with me. We talked about the formula issue, antibiotics as well. Antibiotics kills what? Bacterial infections, right? Same idea as the fever with the Tylenol, right? If your child has a bacterial infection, the number one reason why kids visit pediatricians is because of what? Ear infections, right? And the number one course of action we do here in America for ear infections is give them
Antibiotics.
and as they recur 3 or 4 times, we say, okay, no more antibiotics, you're going to get tubes, right? See how well programmed we are? We're so good, we just follow it.
We've had a lot of kids.
Yeah, we're just so good at it, right? So what does this mean? When you give a child an antibiotic, all right, again, you're in just like the EpiPen scenario, absolutely necessary when it's a life-threatening, higher sensitive type of issue where those antibiotics do wonders for us, and thank goodness we have them, right? But we've got really easy in how we use them, right? Because the more antibiotics you take, what happens to your response to them? The less effective they are, right? Because what happens to the bacteria as it gets stressed or as it gets challenged by an antibiotic? It mutates, right? So now we've created super germs. So actually, what the bacteria has done in terms of mutation to adapt to the environment, which the antibiotic that we've given ourselves over and over again, is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do for our bodies. Does that make sense? Right? The bacteria has won, basically. We should have fought it on our own, build the immunity, and then the whole maturation or the mutation of bacteria never would have happened. Now we've got super germs and super bugs that are around that antibiotics can't even touch anymore, right? Antihistamines we talked about the tonsils. We'll talk about toxicities in the lifestyle here in a few slides to come. I love this slide because it's a good realization to how our culture defies the natural laws of human nature. You know, when a doctor says, "What fits your busy schedule better? Exercising 1 hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day?" Right? That's the whole idea with the mom and the child, right? The mom has to go to work, child has to go to daycare, right? We sacrifice, what we do as a culture for what should happen naturally. In the long term, we always lose. Anytime that we defy natural laws, we'll always lose, right? We've proven this over and over again. Every time man tries to defy what should happen, we never win. So we gotta stop interfering. That's the message. Stop interfering. Let things happen the way they should, all right? And know how to support that innate intelligence of the body. If you remember a few years ago, the study came out where they said that children's cough medicine had no effectiveness, right? They did a placebo and they said, hey, and they pulled off all the children's cough medicine off the market. Do you think that the parents would have said, so that means my child got better on their own because the cough medicine did nothing? You think that's what the parents said? No. What did they say? Oh my goodness, what can we give our kids? Right? We need something different. We need another medicine, another solution pharmaceutically to help our kids if they have a cold or a cough, right? Versus realizing that, hey, when you thought the medicine was working, it's actually your child's own body's body. I said that's probably the best thing for us, right? That things were happening naturally, right? So this is a cartoon that was put in the paper where mothers were desperate to find another solution, and talking about how cough medicine is just like underground black market of drugs for kids. So the results have shown. I mean, history is a great teacher for us to see where we're going. But currently, about 7 million asthma sufferers here in America. About 50 million of them are kids. 14 die per day of allergies or asthma. This is up by 600%. We're finding new allergies that we're exposed to every day. And then the sick days due to asthma, how much it's increased over time. And then the expenses are in the billions, right? So you think we should keep going the way we're going? Research is in. Stop doing. This is the interference part. So we talked about interfering with development. Now, if you're an adult, and we talked about all those things, where you can influence how well your immune system develops and how strong you can make it. If you're an adult, you've passed all that, right? You can say, you can understand the idea that, what happened, I can't control the past. But moving forward, knowing, recognizing that and how to support your body moving forward. We'll talk about that. But where do you think all that information that we talked about, where do you think that's the most beneficial for you to apply to your children and then the generation to come, right? I mean, that's how it needs to happen. This is not going to go away overnight. It has to be. This is a generational problem that has to be solved over generations, right? Just like heart disease and cancer cannot be solved by a surgery or a pill or it's never going to be solved. It's going to be solved over generations, and it has to be solved through lifestyle changes. Mental stress and anxiety. So a lot of our immune system gets suppressed when we're in a sympathetic response. Sympathetic is a fight or flight response. So when you're in a fight or flight response, your immune system shuts down along with your digestion. I put this in here because it decreases immune system, diets, environment, lifestyle. What time of year do you think this is most prevalent for people?
Christmas.
So give me the period. From when?
Thanksgiving.
To
January 1st.
To January, right? Okay. When people's immune system, they take a nosedive, right? A recent study came out that increasing sugar suppresses the immune system. So they said that if you ingest 75 grams of sugar a day, it suppresses your immune system by 50%, even higher in kids, right? Everyone know how much sugar is in 1 can of soda? It's about what? Anyone know?
24.
What's that?
I said 24.
Yeah, it's actually about 34 to 36 grams of sugar in 1 can of soda.
Wow.
Okay? So you have 2 of those.
How many teaspoons is that for us Americans?
Yeah, I don't know. I know I speak in metric versus imperial. But 75 grams is not hard, right? What is the recommended amount of sugar that an adult should have in America? by the CDC. What do they recommend that you should have in a day? It's higher for males than females. Males can have up to 24. Females up to 15 to 18. Children 12 and under. Right? If you just look at what you're eating, and then we're talking about added sugar, not natural occurring, just added refined sugars, right? All right? It's very easy if you look at the foods that we eat, especially processed foods, how you can get to those numbers very quickly, right? But Christmas, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, because this is where people don't exercise, stress goes up, diets go down, right? It's like the military. You are exposing yourself to every indigenous, non-self protein particle. Say, hey, come and invade me. It's open season, right? And this is when what season starts during this period? It's called the flu and allergy season, right? And this is why. All right. It's not because the pollens are higher, because there's always some pollen at some point of the year. If it's cedar in December, ragweed in October, or mold in May, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just that period for most people is where they're most susceptible to sickness. And that's where all that big crescendo, when they report, flu season is the worst this year. This is the highest we've seen it so far. Because people's lifestyles take a nosedive. And then sterilizing the environment. Remember we talked about the antibiotic and how it suppresses the natural function of the body? Now, I'm all about cleanliness and being clean and sanitation, right? But do you think that we've gone a little overboard with sterilization? It's the same idea. The more that we sterilize things and we don't get exposed to indigenous bacteria, our immune systems cannot develop. We cannot take that on and say, okay, let's build a resistance to it, right? And it's almost like living in a bubble, right? And then when something does come and attack us, or we get exposed to something, we have these enormous responses that for some people are almost even fatal, right? And that's why, I'm all for sanitation, but we've definitely gone way overboard when it comes to sterilizing the environment. And mucus builders. This is where we can control as an adult. If you say, hey, Doc, that upbringing category and the scoring of my card, I didn't do so good. So what can I do to help suppress or regulate that histamine response? Is you got to eat the foods you're putting in your body. You got to put foods that are non-anti-inflammatory, all right, or non-histamine type of foods. The things that produce histamine in your body are sugar, which we talked about, and dairy. Dairy is one of the biggest mucus precursors you can put in your body. All right, it builds up that histamine response so much higher and higher, and that's why I don't even think dairy when products from cow, dairy milk, shouldn't even be in our diet. There's so many other alternatives. I really don't think the idea, you probably heard me talk about this before, that taking another mammal's secretions and putting it in another mammal's body just doesn't work in biology, right? And our body just doesn't process it well. A lot of people recognize the protein in milk called casein as a non-self protein, and that's why they have huge responses when they have dairy. Some people might have clinical responses, IBS, bloating, and have intolerances. Some people might have subclinical where you don't even realize it, but internally your body's a mess. Everyone's body does not just respond. The protein of casein is just so large that, the cow's gut has 4 chambers to break it down. We have 1. So there's always that the body recognizes that protein is not self. Some of you, again, just like allergies, might be really sensitive, or you might have a high tolerance for it, but it's still a non-self protein.
Does ours contain the goat's milk?
Goat's milk is actually more genetically compatible with us, right? Because again, goats only have 1 chamber, right? So their proteins in milk are a lot more simpler than what we find in cow's milk. But even go a stretch beyond that, go to a plant milk like coconut milk or almond milk, right? Which has the same properties of the calcium that you want in it, hemp milk, all good alternatives other than dairy milk. All right. Okay, start doing. We went into exhaustion about promoting the natural immune response versus sterilizing. I always say plain and dirty. Let your kids get exposed strategically in a way to their environments where they can get exposed to concentric circles of expanding environments so their body can build that resistance, right? I say play in the dirt, right? Don't be so...
The old sandboxes.
That's right, right? Let them play in the dirt, all right? Drinking water is one of the things you want to add to your diet when it comes to whatever allergen that you have sensitivity to, because water is one of the most common and natural antihistamines you can put in your body. It's a buffer. It's new. And if you drink alkaline water, like pH water, it's even better to reduce that histamine response. All right. And then when it comes to your diet, I won't go into a whole lot about, everyone heard me talk about the food plate, where 50% of your diet should be live food, 2-to-1 ratio of vegetables to fruit. Everyone should follow that. I know it's hard, but I ideally follow that. But when it comes to supplements, what boosts the immune response, meaning, those antibodies, that help that immune response, vitamin A, C, and B. You can usually get these in combination. Vitamin A, you should get a lot through your diet already. Potatoes, yams, all good sources of vitamin A. B complexes, zinc. Zinc is really good because zinc is the only thing that's been proven to stop the replication of RNA in a virus. So if you ever feel that your immune system is fighting something, the zinc will help eliminate the reproduction of a virus. It only works in viruses. All right, that's why you guys probably heard of zinc lozenges or zinc drops. That's why they're so effective. Magnesium and copper, you should get enough of this in your diet. Garlic is a good natural immune booster. Everyone should be on a multi-mineral, multivitamin on a day-to-day basis, regardless. That's just your foundation, essentials on an everyday basis, where from A to Z, what your body needs essentially. You should be on a very good whole food multi-mineral multivitamin. Omega-3 fatty acids for an adult, you should be taking about 1,200 milligrams a day of omega. And the omega-3 fatty acids, there's just too much research and it's too compelling not to take it. I mean, it helps you in so many ways, not only immune system, cardiovascular, brain health. I mean, everyone should be taking omega-3 fatty acids. Exercise. Exercise is really good during those, we talked about the times of Thanksgiving to New Year's, because what does exercise do to your body? Other than, for weight control and balance, but what does it do to your body? When you're moving, what does it do?
It makes you sweat.
It makes you sweat, so it detoxifies you. Do you think it encourages harder blood flow? Mm-hmm. Right? So if you have all these antibodies, right, just like the military, and if you're exercising, that blood flow is getting turned over more and more and more. Those antibodies that are surveilling your body, do you think your immune system will work better? See, when you're static and you're sedentary, your blood pressure is lower, but those antibodies don't circulate as much. So there's more pockets for penetration when it comes to your body not recognizing something as it invades. So that's why the oxygenation and the exercise part of it is really good. Rest and repair for those especially those months of high stress where you just need to take a breather. And obviously we're in a chiropractic office, so we're going to talk a little bit how this involves the immune system. Your immune system, the glands that we talked about, are ran through a neurological just like the fuse box, let's say. The fuse box controls different parts of your body. Well, there's a part of your immune system that's controlled by your nervous system. Those glands are usually controlled by, the lower cervical spine, C5, 6, and 7, and also mid-thoracic between T11, T12, and L1. All right. So a lot of you that have issues with, sinuses, and they say, Doc, I get adjusted, my sinuses open up. Or I can breathe better after I get adjusted, right? And the reason is not because there's any mechanical shift or change with the adjustment that makes you breathe better, but the stimulation of the nerve that allows your body to get rid of the excessive histamine that your body produces, it happens through the lymphatic system, happens so much more quickly. That's why by the time people leave, they're saying, Doc, I can breathe better. Doc, I'm draining so much right after the adjustment. And that's the reason why, is that you're just increasing the capability of what the body can do. All right. So when people say, Doc, I'm feeling sick, I don't want to come and get it adjusted, I say this is the most important time you need to come get adjusted, to help your body obviously get stronger and better faster. All right. So I hope I've enlightened you when it comes to your health. I've always talked about to people that, it's not that that we were given wrong information about what to do. Some of us have never had information about it. We've learned it from our parents. But one thing is for sure that we've been led down a wrong map. If you remember Stephen Covey's book, when he talks about a map, he uses the illustration of having a map. You're in Chicago and you're trying to get to a destination. And if you're using a map of Detroit, will you ever find your destination? And even if you were so passionate about your map, that this is the right map, and you went faster and you tried everything you can to get to the destination using that map, would it still get you to the wrong place? It would, right? It would just get you to the wrong place faster, right? That it doesn't matter, what the belief system is. It's all based on accuracy of information, right? And I really think that a lot of us, remember I just talked about how we're so programmed, the map that we're given. We talked about, why kids go to the pediatrician, the antibiotic. We're so programmed in that map that we almost are so determined that that's the way it is. And a lot of people believe that's the only way, where I believe that there are better ways to do it. And there's different maps out there that we can follow to get us to the results that we want. So I'll stay for questions if you guys have questions. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And then you guys are free to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.